What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. In this one, I'm going to go over what I've used, the optimal draft strategy if you're given a pick between 4 and 6. For all of this, I'm going to assume you're in a 12-team league, and I'll sort of explain how that would maybe change a little bit if you're not. But in general, this is assuming that you're in a 12-team league. Um, I earlier did a video on picks 1 through 3, and then shortly after this, we'll be getting a video on picks 7 through 9, and then one on picks 10 through 12. So we'll sort of touch every single draft slot you could have here without having to make 12 of these videos. So yeah, first off, I want to just say thank you to everybody. We set a goal of 100 subscribers by the end of the month, or by the start of the NFL season, and we're at, I want to say, 107 already. So that's awesome. It's really humbling that there are that many of you guys that are interested in hearing what I have to say. So thank you guys so much for that. Maybe it's crazy, but let's see if we can hit 200 by the start of the season. Probably not, but let's do our best. That'd be awesome. So yeah, if you are new here, please do subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get notifications. We do 3 videos a week. If you get anything out of this video, give it a like. It really does help with the algorithm. So yeah, thank you guys very much again so much. And with that, let's get into the video. So getting started with the first 2 rounds, assuming you have picks 4 to 6, for me, the optimal scenario here is that you get Austin Eckler. I even said that if you have the 3rd pick, I would be taking him, and I even wouldn't judge you if you took him with your 2nd pick overall because of the risk with McCaffrey. But I think that it's pretty unlikely that you get Eckler here. Maybe with the 4th pick you can get him. I think in a lot of drafts you do see it going Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp. So maybe the 4th pick gets Eckler, but anything lower than that, I think it's hard to do that. So I think otherwise, the pretty obvious selection is to take Jefferson, Kupp, or Chase, whichever one of those 3 is your favorite. I personally prefer them in that order, Jefferson, Kupp, Chase, but I'll accept arguments for any one of those guys as the number 1. And if you do take a wide receiver first, it's really critical that you get a running back in that 2nd round because there's a pretty significant drop-off in rounds 3 and 4. So if you enter round 3 with 0 running backs, you're just going to be weak at the position. And at that point, you might as well go 0 RB. So in round 2, towards the middle to end of round 2, I love guys like Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, and Javonte Williams. That's the order that I would select those guys, and they tend to be available here pretty frequently. And that's personally the order that I would take those guys in, but obviously, take the player you want. This is more just supposed to be a recommendation for the positional players that you should be taking, so I'm recommending that you get a running back in round 2, and then I'm giving you the examples of the guys that fall there. Even if you do get Eckler with your 1st pick, I still love taking Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara there. But if both of those guys are gone, I'm also I found myself taking CD or Mark Andrews in round 2. But in general, like I touched on, there's going to be a very significant drop in running back talent pretty quickly. So I do love leaving the first 2 rounds with running backs, but it's pretty hard to do with this pick, especially without really reaching on another running back and not taking one of those top 3 receivers in the 1st round. So in general, I find myself going with one of those receivers and then trying to get Aaron Jones or Kamara, because those guys are pretty frequently there. So moving into rounds 3 to 5, I'm going to assume there's 2 scenarios here. You either have 1 running back or 2 running backs after the first 2 rounds. I'm assuming there's no scenario in which you took 0 running backs. So if you did take 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, the obvious selection for me in round 3, in sort of both scenarios, is to take Mark Andrews there if he makes it to you. It's not all that common. I think his ADP is towards the tail end of the 2nd round, so it doesn't happen that often, but if it does, it's a slam dunk, take Andrews there. And otherwise, I think you got to take a receiver here. And the guys I like and I find myself taking pretty often are Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, and T. Higgins. That's the order I have them ranked in as well, but I think all of those 3 of those guys are going to be low-end wide receiver 1s this season, and being able to pair that with 2 RB1s or a top-end receiver and a very high-end RB1, that's great. If you only took 1 running back, then I would certainly draft your 2nd running back here in these rounds. I apologize, I did sort of mix up the order here. But yeah, if you only have 1 running back after the first 2 rounds, then it's pretty important that you draft your 2nd in round 3. There's going to be a huge drop-off, especially for you, because your round 4 pick is going to be really late. So the guys that I find myself taking are Barkley, Fournette, Zeke, and James Conner. I prefer them in the order Fournette, Barkley, Zeke, Conner. But obviously, take the player you want. I'm just saying that if you have one of these picks, you're going to be waiting a long time for your round 4 picks. It's really important that you get that second running back by the end of round 3. And then pretty much in almost all of these scenarios, you find yourself with 2 running backs and a receiver in the first 3 rounds, and then rounds 4 to 5 are pretty easy. Just take the 2 best receivers available for you at your picks. I listed a lot of guys here that I love. This is where I find the most value at the wide receiver position. Year over year, there are guys in rounds 4 and 5 that are league winners at the wide receiver position. 2 years ago, you had Stephon Diggs. This last year, you had Cooper Kupp. And I think somebody on this list that I named here will be that version of that player this season. So guys that I find myself drafting really often are Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, Marquise Brown, Mooney, Robinson, Judy, Cooks, St. Brown, etc. Pretty much in that order. Not necessarily exactly, but point being, there's going to be a really great value in rounds 4 and 5 at wide receiver position. So just take the guys that you want here. There's not necessarily a wrong approach. It's just take whichever guys you think are best there. So then when you get into rounds 6 through 9, you get to the point where your actual position in the draft order starts mattering a lot less because you find yourself, in general, you're going to find yourself reaching or getting better values on players. There's going to be more disparity between ADP and where players actually get drafted the further into the draft you get. But during these 4 rounds, this is generally where I find myself drafting my quarterback. I think there's a lot of great values in rounds 6 through 9, so I generally sort of just wait for value to find me. The couple guys I'm willing to reach on in general I've found are are Hurts or Russell. But players I really find myself taking most often are Hurts or Kyler Murray in round 6, or Russell Wilson or Dak in round 7. In general, in rounds 6 through 9, I find odd to me that a lot of players find themselves drafting tight ends here. Most of the data suggests that if you don't take a high-end tight end, there's not going to be a huge gap between somebody that takes a low-end tight end 1 and somebody who's just streaming it each week. So if you haven't taken a tight end at this point, I find that it's best just to wait and throw 2 darts late and see if you get this year's Robert Tonyan or whatever. There's no reason to draft a guy like Dallas Goedert or Zach Ertz because they're just going to be okay, and it's not going to give you any sort of edge, and you can get much more positionally valuable players here. These are also the rounds I find myself taking a little bit of running back depth, especially if you do get your 3 wide receivers early on. Players I find myself taking really often in these rounds are Chase Edmonds, A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt, and Tony Pollard. Plenty of other names could go on that list, but those are guys I find myself with the most exposure to. But generally, I like to leave round 9 with my quarterback, 4 receivers and 3 running backs, and then maybe a tight end if I took one early, and if not, I generally find myself with another running back or receiver there. So now that we've sort of gotten you through the 9 rounds, I sort of want to just touch on a couple other approaches or notes that I want to make for players drafting in this order. Having a pick that's not on the bookends of the draft order, I consider the bookends sort of picks 1 to 3 and picks 10 through 9. So if you're in that picks 4 to 9 range, it gives you an opportunity to play the ADP game a lot more than players who are drafting at the turn. And what I mean by that is if you have 2 players you really want with your earlier pick in your back-to-back picks, take the one that maybe you don't want them the most, but take the one that you think has a better chance that won't make it back to you. So, for example, let's say in rounds 4 and 5, you want Mike Williams and Cortland Sutton. You might have Sutton ranked higher than Mike Williams, but Mike Williams has a higher ADP, so I'd recommend that you take Mike Williams in that 4th round because there's a greater chance that Sutton makes it to you in the 5th round. Basically, there's no way you can get both if you take Sutton there because Mike Williams will go in between your 2 picks, but Sutton might make it around, so it's generally worth playing the ADP game there. I'll also say that late round picks after round 9 should primarily focus on upside. Obviously, this is dependent on league size. If you have a really large starting roster, I think you should wait a little bit longer to start taking those home run swings because it's important that you have a starting lineup you can trust each week. But when you're getting towards the tail end of your drafts, there's not really much safety or reliability anyway, so you might as well take guys that have an opportunity to be league winners for you. And then building onto that, I'd recommend that you draft players late who that you can pretty easily decide to drop after week 1 if they don't pan out. Examples of that are receivers like KJ Osborne, who you'll know after week 1 if he's being a more integral part of the offense or if he's just a clear number 3 behind Thielen and Jefferson. Rondale Moore is another good example here. He could find himself in the wide receiver 2 role to start the season for the Cardinals, and they could be manufacturing touches for him, or he could be not involved at all, and AJ Green could be the 2, and they could be throwing the running backs and Ertz, and then there could be no point. So that's sort of what I'm getting at here. Another example would be Dameon Pierce for the Texans. I think he could have a really integral role early on, but if it looks like they're going to be using Burkhead as the 3rd down back, then maybe that doesn't work out. So yeah. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.